If anything feels off, even a little, believe yourself. Share this to protect someone's aunt, mother, daughter, or sister. I knew the face wasn't his the second the car door opened. The man walking toward my aunt outside the San Juan terminal had the same beard shape, sure, but the eyes didn't match the softness I'd memorized in those Facebook photos. His smile was too quick, the kind that flicks on like a hallway light and dies just as fast. He said, "Queen Lorraine," and my aunt smiled out of reflex, because that's who she was, then glanced down at her suitcase handle like she needed to check whether her fingers still worked. 3 hours earlier, I'd been on night shift in Charlotte, taping a dressing and whispering a prayer I didn't want my patient to hear. I trust Aunt Lorraine. She taught me how to move calm through chaos. She taught me how to hold a stranger's hand without stealing their strength. But I didn't trust a man who never once got on camera, who claimed teenagers were bogging down his Wi-Fi every single evening he was ready to see her smile. Let me rewind, just enough so you know the ground we're standing on. My name is Camila Reyes. I'm an ER nurse. My aunt, Lorraine Carter, practically raised me while my mom worked doubles. Lorraine could turn a waiting room riot into a Bible study with a look. People gave her their fear like it was a coat they didn't need anymore. She carried it, folded, never wrinkled. After my uncle passed, she wore her grief quiet. Church, clinic, casserole. She kept a list on her fridge of who needed prayer and why. She never once put her own name on it. 8 years later, a message landed in her inbox like a hymn. Good evening, Ms. Lorraine. I hope this finds you covered in peace. He called himself Rayford Daniels, widower, 2 teens, Florida, deacon at a small church with a steeple that looked like the ones we drew as kids. He didn't flirt. He honored. He sent a Donnie McClurkin playlist at 5:45 a.m. He wrote blessings at night that felt like a soft blanket tucked up under your chin. I listened to one of his voice notes while stirring my coffee, low, kind, steady. I admire how you carry your silence, he told her. It's got a language. Tell me you wouldn't lean toward that, just a little. There were small splinters. He ducked video, first a cracked camera, then a bad router. He posted verses that never had typos, but every photo looked like it had been taken by the same cautious friend who never stood too close. My aunt, who could spot a lie from the far end of a trauma bay, chose patience over panic. She asked for a call. He prayed with her instead. And she slept better for the first time in months. By February, they'd built a rhythm so gentle it felt designed. Morning blessing. Midday check-in. Evening prayer. On Tuesdays he asked what scripture anchored her this week. On Fridays he asked what dessert she'd bake if the whole family came over. On Sunday mornings, he told her to sing the alto line and save him a seat. When she told him her dream trip was Puerto Rico, he went quiet for a breath and said, "Then let's go where the water speaks." He insisted she book it herself, so you always feel safe, and somehow that sounded like respect, not strategy. She bought 3 nights at Seabright Coral Inn in Isla Verde, a place with chipped blue paint and balconies that faced an ocean so close you could hear the tide argue with the wind. She texted our family group with her flight number, the hotel address, the front desk phone, and the exact time she'd call after check-in. I sent back 3 heart emojis and a single rule: video verify on arrival. She packed her good church sandals, the floral sundress that made her look like God finished her on a sunny day, a gold chain from her 20th anniversary that she still wore when she needed steady hands. She tucked her anointing oil in a side pocket and a brand new journal beside her Bible. She whispered, "Lord, if it's good, let it be good. If it's not, close the door." When she landed, the air wrapped her in salt and heat. She stepped out beneath a sky the color of patient scrubs fresh from the dryer. She dialed me. "Baby, I'll call again from the room," she laughed, breathless. "The breeze is showing off." That's when the sedan slid to the curb like it had been waiting since dawn. The driver kept his sunglasses on. He stood too near, the way people do when they're pretending to be familiar. "Rayford had a family thing," he said, opening the back door. "I'm his people. He asked me to take care of you." Aunt Lorraine lifted her suitcase herself. I could see in the airport camera photo she texted, her mouth smiled, her eyes did not. She chose kindness anyway. She always did. In the car, he didn't speak. No small talk about the heat, no offer of water, no first time on the island. Aunt Lorraine tried anyway. "The mountains look painted here." He grunted something about island air being good for the soul and kept his hands locked at 10 and 2 like the wheel owed him money. They reached Seabright. He signed the check-in log with her name, another detail we'd argue with later, and handed the key to her like a favor he could call back in. My aunt thanked the clerk, asked whether the balcony faced east. I journal better with morning light, she always said, and walked toward the elevator with her suitcase rolling like a soft amen. At 5:02 p.m., she called the front desk for the Wi-Fi code. She wanted to send Sherelle a photo from the balcony. At 5:08 p.m., her phone logged its last partial activity, a text that read, "All good. Landed safe." The dots never turned blue. I called. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. I told myself she was rinsing her face, brushing her edges, choosing a dinner dress. I told myself the ocean was loud and the Wi-Fi was shy. I told myself the man in the sunglasses was some cousin in over his head but trying. At 10:13 p.m., I called the front desk. "Can you ring room 204? My aunt promised she'd call when she settled." The clerk's voice shifted from breezy to careful. "We'll check on her in the morning." Morning? No. I called again. I asked for a welfare check. The clerk said housekeeping would knock after breakfast. I gave him my full name, phone number, my title, and a voice that nurses use when the clock starts winning. "Please." I didn't sleep. I read the chat thread from Rayford, every blessing, every verse, every perfect comma, and felt something cold climb my back. It wasn't fear yet. Fear is hot. This was the chill that comes before a storm when birds stop singing as if warned. At 9:50 a.m., a housekeeper knocked. No answer. She came back at 10:10 with the assistant manager. They opened the door to a room that looked paused. Curtains drawn. Bed untouched. A towel in the bathroom trash like it had been twisted to silence a sob and then shoved down deep. The manager reached for his radio with hands that had probably only ever checked pool towels and minibar receipts. "Call 911. By 10:38 a.m., yellow tape webbed the second floor. "Detective." Joel Navarro moved like he'd seen too much and still refused to rush. He asked for security footage. He asked for the phone that wasn't where a phone should be. He spoke in Spanish to the staff, in patience to panic, the same way my aunt used to slow a room down without raising her voice. At 3:13 a.m., the lobby camera had caught a hooded figure on the fire escape, one hand on the rail, one shoulder lowered beneath the long strap of a duffel that didn't sway. He paused on the second-floor landing for 3 seconds, listening for the kind of noise that tells you if the world noticed. Then he ghosted out of frame. I watched the footage in a back office that smelled like lemon cleaner. The screen threw gray light onto faces that didn't want to learn what they were about to learn. I held my aunt's travel folder on my knees, the paper warm from my hands, and realized the part one hated most. He knew the blind spots. Not just the cameras. A widow's. Detective. Navarro asked me to walk him through everything. Voice notes, playlists, the way he typed "Rest well, Queen," always at the same 5-minute window before midnight. Timers, Navarro said quietly. He schedules comfort. I had to step into the hallway and put my forehead against cool paint. Somewhere down the corridor, a child laughed inside a room with cartoons humming. The normal world had the nerve to keep breathing. They found my aunt's phone later, its glass a spiderweb, its insides drowned, yet the text coaxed back pieces, just enough to confirm the transfer at 5:07 p.m. and the apps he cleared after. Her last photo was a blurry screenshot of the hotel confirmation she'd sent us. The final gifts of a woman who planned even her joy with safety in mind. I replayed Rayford's last voice note in my car outside the precinct until the battery begged me to stop. "Safe travels, Queen. I'll be waiting." He was. Just not as the man he claimed to be. The assistant DA calls Detective Navarro. The crypto wallet pinged a Miami exchange 40 minutes after the transfer. A name slides onto the whiteboard, Darian Henson. And in a quiet apartment stateside, a new widow in Baton Rouge presses play on a blessing she doesn't know was sent by the same hands. I learned a long time ago that silence has flavors. There's the soft kind that follows a joke when everyone's smiling, and there's the wired kind that hums behind your ears like a bad fluorescent bulb. The hallway outside room 204 tasted like metal on my tongue. I stood with the assistant manager, a careful man with a tie that had seen better summers. He kept smoothing the knot like it could tidy time. Housekeeping hovered nearby, hands clasped, eyes bright with the sheen people get when they sense the world tilting. I pressed my palm to the door. Cool wood. No music inside, no TV chatter, no shower. Just air. Too still. Ms. Reyes, the manager said, voice low, police will be here any minute. Call them again, I said. Tell them her niece is a nurse and I'm not leaving this carpet. He nodded and passed the message into his radio like a prayer. I am not the relative who panics. I'm the one the family calls when somebody's blood pressure is playing games or when a toddler swallows a penny. But I couldn't make my hands stop whispering. They kept rubbing together like I could sand down the fear if I just made enough heat. A floor tech opened the stairwell door and stepped in with a stack of towels. Everything about him was so normal it hurt. Earbuds, soft sneakers, a stain on his sleeve that looked like mango juice. He paused, took in the yellow tape strung loosely at the end of the hall, and turned around without asking questions. That's how you know humans know more than we say. We read rooms before we read signs. Sirens don't wail here. They arrive. A blue-white strobe rolled across the reception wall downstairs, and then 2 EMTs slipped past us with quiet shoes and focused eyes. One of them, a woman with short hair and a jaw like resolve, knocked twice. Nothing. The manager unlocked the door. The deadbolt had not been thrown. It clicked open like a throat clearing. The smell greeted us first. Not rot, nothing like that. Just wrong air. The kind that tells you a space has been interrupted. Everybody step back please, the EMT said, trained calm. She moved inside with her partner, scanning as she walked. We'll call you in if we need you. The room looked paused. Bedspread smooth, luggage on the bench, curtains breathing a little with the balcony crack. I could see the edge of my aunt's floral suitcase, the one with the little gold tag that read Elsie. She bought it on sale and still told the cashier, feels like a splurge. The EMT knelt out of my sightline. Her partner snapped on a body cam and began to narrate for the record. I closed my eyes. People think the hardest part is the news. It isn't. It's the stretch of seconds right before, when your body knows and your mind refuses to sign the paper. Time, the EMT said softly. Calling it. No. No, no, no. I leaned hard into the doorframe until my shoulder complained. That tiny ache grounded me. I counted my breaths the way I teach anxious patients to do, 4 in, 6 out, like you're blowing out a candle you respect. Detectives arrived with measured steps. A man introduced himself as Detective Joel Navarro, San Juan Police Department. He had a notebook that had been folded back on itself so many times the cardboard looked like suede. He surveyed the room with his eyes before he took a single step. That's a skill you pick up when rooms talk for a living. Ms. Reyes, you can wait in the office down the hall if you'd like, he offered. I'll sit where I can see the door, I said. I promised my aunt I'd be here for her. I wasn't. I can at least be here now. He nodded, as if he understood promises never expire, they just change shape. Evidence markers perched in quiet rows soon after. A towel in the bathroom trash. A phone nowhere obvious. The bed untouched. I stared at the little swan-folded towel on the dresser and wanted to tear it apart, not because it meant anything, but because it pretended life was sweet in a room where life had been cornered. Navarro stepped to the balcony, studied the hinge, then checked the tiny latch that most tourists don't bother to use. He ran his fingers along the track, then wiped them on a clean square of gauze. Sand, he murmured, more to himself than to us. Wind brought it today. Not enough to cover prints. Not enough to change how a door shuts. He asked the manager for the guest log. The page showed Lorraine Carter written in neat letters that looked like they belonged to a person who still sends birthday cards, steady, rounded, never rushed. A second hand had added the room number. Not hers. Different stroke. Navarro lifted the clipboard as if it could bruise. Housekeeping described their morning. Knocked at 9:50. No answer. Knocked again at 10:10. Still. Fetch the manager. Open. Step back. That sequence will live in their bones now. People forget that scenes keep collateral. Navarro kept his voice warm but firm, the tone you use when somebody spilled something breakable and you need them to move their feet without shame. He asked the times again, and again the times landed in the same square. He spoke to me as if I were a colleague, not just family. We'll need contacts, Ms. Reyes. Phone numbers, email, the messaging app she used. You said there were voice notes. Yes. I swallowed. He sent blessings like clockwork. His eyebrows lifted. Clockwork. The same 5-minute window every morning and late night. My aunt joked he was either very disciplined or very in love. Or scheduled, he said. People schedule comfort when they're selling it. He asked if I had noticed anything off in the airport pickup photo she'd texted. I had. The sunglasses stayed on too long. The beard was shaped right, but the jawline was carved by a different hand. My aunt's smile was there, but it floated, like a sticker on a window that hadn't been pressed flat. They located her phone hours later in the bathroom, screen shattered, waterlogged, heavy with the kind of silence that comes from being submerged. A tech cradled it like a moth cupped in gentle hands. We'll try, he said, and every nurse in me wanted to hug him for not pretending. By afternoon, Navarro had the hotel security footage up in a back office that smelled like lemon cleaner and old receipts. We watched the lobby view on loop. I saw my aunt enter with the man beside her, his head turned just enough to rob us of a clean look. He never touched her suitcase. He didn't need to. He held the clock instead. Then the frame jumped to the dead hours, past midnight, where the carpet hum became the loudest thing on earth. At 3:13 a.m., the lens caught the fire escape through a far corner of glass, a figure in a dark hoodie, one hand on the rail, a duffel hugging his shoulder. He took the steps like someone counting them, slow, steady, never frantic. He paused on the second-floor landing, 3 full seconds, listened, adjusted, and vanished toward the alley where cameras had nothing to say. No dramatic run. No turn of the head. Just certainty, the kind people have when they've used this map before. Navarro rewound and watched that 3-second pause again. He knows the blind spots, he said. Not just the hotels. Whoever did this studies people who still believe in promises. I sat with that line until it bit. Downstairs, the front desk rang with vacation questions. Do we have beach towels after 5? Can we switch to a pool view? The world kept asking for its little mercies. I wanted to scream into the phone, someone's aunt did everything right and still didn't get home, but I just stared at the elevator numbers glow one at a time and thought about grocery lists and prayer lists and how often we pretend they're the same thing. At 5:07 p.m. the previous evening, the bank transfer had moved $17,900 from my aunt's account into a digital wallet that had already been tagged in a different case. The timestamp made my stomach cold. That meant someone accessed her phone or her passwords inside the room within minutes of check-in. He wasn't improvising. He came with a plan and a clock. Did she ever send you a screenshot of the hotel confirmation? Navarro asked. Yes. Last night. Blurry, but you can read the name and dates. Send it to me, he said. It proves intention. She didn't wander into harm. She planned a trip with someone she trusted. I forwarded the screenshot with shaking thumbs and typed the one sentence that kept circling my head. She went to rest, not to disappear. While techs coaxed the drowned phone back toward light, while officers canvassed the block for another angle of a hood and a duffel, while a manager double-checked a guest list that had nothing helpful to say, I slipped out to the parking lot to breathe air that hadn't been in that room. The ocean smelled sweet and sharp at the same time, like sugarcane with a blade hidden inside. I dialed Sherelle, my cousin. I told her what we knew and left out what we didn't. Grief has enough weight without guesses piled on top. She didn't cry. Not then. She said, please make sure they say her name right. She cared about that. So I went back inside and corrected every clipboard that said Lorraine with 1 R. Later, Navarro asked if I could walk him through the beginning, the message that felt like a hymn, the playlists at dawn, the voice notes that tucked blankets around tired bones. I told him how he wrote blessings that arrived just before midnight and just after sunrise, like somebody set 2 reminders to sound like intimacy. I played one. Rest well, Queen. God smiles when you do. Navarro didn't roll his eyes. He didn't judge women who lean toward softness after years of carrying everyone else. He simply said, predators practice the tone of care until it fits like skin. Something in me shifted then. Grief is a river. It will carry you whether you want to ride or not. But anger, clean anger, can be a paddle. I clenched my jaw until it creaked and decided my aunt would not be reduced to a cautionary tale told in past tense. She would be evidence that turns a key. By evening, the text had pulled pieces from the phone's drowned memory, enough for timestamps, enough for fragments, enough to prove the last text hung unsent at 5:08 p.m. The chat app history coughed up file names for voice notes and contact handles even where the content was scrambled. Plenty to map, the text said, tapping a screen. Patterns live even where words die. We followed one thread to a number routed through a burner service with infrastructure far from this island. That call history looked like a string of pearls ending in smoke. The Facebook profile that had warmed my aunt's evenings flickered off the internet 12 hours after the transfer. No photos, no posts, no friends, erased with the efficiency of someone who cleans their shoes on the mat and never steps in mud. Whoever he is, he's done this before, Navarro said. He knows what to move and when. I stared at the tiny hotel pen in the evidence bag, the one he used to sign my aunt's name. That pen shook me more than the grainy footage. Violence has a noise, paperwork has a permanence. You can't arrest a pen, but you can follow what it wrote. I stepped back into 204 once more before they sealed it. The room had cooled. Evidence markers perched like origami birds. I whispered to the air, not because I thought she needed it, but because I needed to say it in the place where her last ordinary thoughts lived. Auntie, I'm here. I pictured her setting her purse by the dresser, touching the balcony latch out of habit, calling downstairs for the Wi-Fi so she could send her daughter a slice of ocean. I pictured her planning to pick a dinner spot where the fish isn't too salty and the music sits low. She never got to do any of it. People say you can't mourn a future that never existed. They're wrong. That's the only future you ever mourn. Navarro walked in softly, as if a memory might break. Ms. Reyes, we'll take it from here tonight. You should rest. I won't, I said, and he didn't argue. He handed me a card. If your aunt saved any extra screenshots to send to family, we'll need them. She did, I said. She always does. He nodded to the techs, and they began closing the room with a reverence that surprised me. Not everyone treats scenes with gentleness. These folks did. Maybe they had their own aunts. Back in the office, the assistant manager pulled a styrofoam cup of water from a cooler and set it near my elbow. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, almost to himself, he said, "My mother came here in 1972 to clean rooms so I could go to school. She used to say a hotel is a place where people put their worries on pause. I never thought," he stopped and pinched the bridge of his nose. "We'll help however we can." I believed him. Not because of his words, but because of how he kept looking at the housekeeping door like he owed those women a safer morning. Night settled over Isla Verde with that deep blue the island wears so well. The pool lights clicked on. Somewhere a couple laughed as if the sky made a joke only the two of them could hear. That's the cruel part about grief, the way joy dares keep happening in the next yard over. Around 11, Navarro called me back to the monitor. "Came through from Financial Crimes," he said. A note glowed on the screen. The wallet address that took my aunt's money pinged an exchange in Miami 40 minutes later. And a rental application linked to a temporary lease carried a name that made the air in the room feel thinner. Darian Henson, Navarro read. He likes alliteration, I guess. The name hadn't yet been woven into our family story, but it already had the weight of a stone. We didn't know the extent. We didn't know the script folders or the AI faces or the scheduled blessings that would follow like breadcrumbs back to a kitchen where cruelty baked loaves and called them comfort. All we knew was this: a clock ticked, a transfer moved, and a name finally sat still long enough to pin. I called Sherelle again. "We have a lead," I said. "They're moving." She exhaled into the phone the way someone does when they've been holding their breath for 2 days. "Tell them Mama raised Nuz," her voice broke for the first time. She swallowed. "Tell them Mama raised fighters." I already did. I hung up, stepped outside, and let the ocean push its voice into my ears until my heartbeat slowed. I remembered my aunt laughing in her kitchen at Thanksgiving, flour on her cheek like a fingerprint from heaven. I remembered her saying, "You can want something soft without apologizing for it." I wondered how many women had apologized to themselves for wanting a hand to hold. I promised her, out loud to the night, that we would not let the ending be the last word. My phone buzzed in my palm. A new message from Navarro. "Tomorrow 0800. You need to hear something." No attached file, no extra sentence, just the kind of line that changes the shape of a day. I didn't sleep. I sorted through her screenshots again, playlists, little hearts, the hotel's confirmation email, a photo she tried to take of the balcony light that had come out as a smear of gold. I charged my battery, braided my hair, wrote down every question I could think of. Then I wrote one more: how many people are we dealing with if lies need teams? At 8 sharp the next morning, I stepped into the precinct and followed the coffee smell down the hall. Navarro was already at the screen with a federal liaison whose blazer looked too hot for the island and whose eyes looked too tired for any place on earth. He tapped the spacebar. Audio rolled. A male voice, same tone as the blessings, but stripped of honey, spoke in a memo recovered from a device tied to the wallet. "They lonely," the voice said. "Say the Lord told you to reach out. That's all it takes." The room went still. Not shocked, confirmed. It is one thing to suspect a wolf, it is another to hear the teeth click. Navarro looked at me, not as a witness, but as a person whose life had been rearranged. "We're escalating," he said. "This isn't just a stolen face. It's scripted faith." My jaw tightened until it ached. "Then let's write a different script." He nodded and slid a photo across the desk, grainy, pulled from a street cam near a coffee stand in Old San Juan at 4:20 a.m., a man with the same walk as the figure on the fire escape, paper cup in hand, eyes forward like the morning owed him nothing. The caption beneath the image read potential ID, Henson, Darian, alias ecosystem flagged. Silence fell again, but this time it had a lid. A federal email pings the task force. The same wallet just lit up in Baton Rouge tied to a new widow comfort profile. A late-night blessing is mid-composed to a woman named Gloria, and the voice matches. The sting clock starts. When Navarro hit play on that recovered memo, "They lonely. Say the Lord told you to reach out. That's all it takes." The room chilled. I had worked enough night shifts to know what resignation sounds like, but this wasn't resignation. It was pride. Like a man bragging about the recipe he'd perfected. The federal liaison leaned forward, tapping his pen against the desk. "He's scripted this. Over and over." Navarro nodded. "We've got digital behaviors now, phrasing patterns, timestamps, wallet pings. That's as strong as fingerprints in cybercrime." The liaison looked at me. "Ms. Reyes, I need you to understand, we're no longer looking at a single predator. We're looking at an ecosystem of fraud. He may be the operator, or he may be part of a larger ring." I folded my arms tight across my chest. "I don't care if it's one man or 50. My aunt is gone because he treated her heart like merchandise. You don't get to call that just fraud." The liaison's eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. "That's why you're here. Families keep us from reducing people to case numbers." The task force projected a web across the wall. A Lorraine's wire transfer, $17,900. A routing server, a public cafe router 6 blocks from Seabright Coral Inn. Surveillance, grainy footage of a man in a dark hoodie, never ordering, just sitting, logging in. They froze the frame. Even pixelated, the jaw and stride matched the fire escape figure. "Darian Henson," Navarro said. 47. Fraud priors. 4 states. Known alias ecosystem. He disappears into digital smoke the moment victims transfer funds. They clicked to the next slide, profiles. Dozens of fake Facebook widowers, different names, same rhythm. Gospel playlists. Respectful salutations. Soft lighting. Always widowed. Always God-fearing. Always looking for conversation, not lust. I whispered, he studied her grief like it was a textbook. The forensic tech entered with my aunt's water-damaged phone. They'd extracted fragments, half a text here, a cached file name there. Enough to outline the script. One thread stood out, a message scheduled at 5:45 a.m. every day for weeks. Auto-timed blessings. He wasn't typing them at dawn, he was sleeping. My aunt thought he was awake, thinking of her. They pulled another file. A half-deleted voice note. His tone warm, steady, "Rest well, Queen. I'll carry you in prayer tonight." The liaison paused the playback. "We've matched the waveform with 3 other women. Georgia, Oklahoma, and Illinois. They wired smaller amounts, but the language? Identical. It's a template." My chest burned. I wanted to break the speaker, throw it through the wall. Instead, I said, How many times did he practice that before it sounded like a man who'd buried a wife? Federal analysts explained it like doctors describing a tumor. A morning blessings between 5:30 to 6 a.m. Evening prayers between 11:55 to 12:05 a.m. Consistent spiritual metaphors. Voice notes sprinkled in every 10 to 14 days. He wasn't wooing. He was programming. One analyst added, when victims asked for video calls, he claimed Wi-Fi issues, broken cameras, or teenagers gaming. Always the same excuses. Always plausible enough to delay. The liaison turned to me. Your aunt's case is giving us the first full script sequence. That's invaluable. Invaluable. My voice cracked. She was invaluable before she died. Don't let the word mean just evidence. Navarro replayed the cafe footage. The man sits in the corner, back to the wall. No drink, no food, just a laptop glow. He leaves 20 minutes later, duffel on his shoulder. He knew that router wasn't monitored, Navarro said. But he didn't know the cafe had external cameras. The timestamp, 5:14 p.m., April 18th. The exact moment after my aunt's account was drained. They ran facial recognition against past arrests. A match blinked onto the screen. Darian Henson. Fraud. Coercion. Impersonation. Arrested once in Atlanta, twice in Newark, released with time served. Navarro muttered, this isn't his first deception rodeo. Just as the room started to settle into its grim rhythm, an alert chimed. A new wallet transaction tied to the same ecosystem had pinged, this time from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The victim? A 64-year-old widow named Gloria, recently joined to a Christian senior support group. Navarro swore under his breath. He's already grooming another. They pulled her chat logs, real-time. The message on her screen, still unfinished, was mid-compose, you speak like someone God brought into my life for restoration. The voice matched. Same cadence. Same synthetic softness. I leaned forward, fists on the table. So he's writing the same story again. Do we have to wait until another family buries someone before we stop him? The liaison shook his head. No. We're moving. Miami rental popped on metadata. He's stateside. We coordinate a sting tonight. I walked out of that briefing with my aunt's scarf knotted around my wrist like armor. Outside, the island sun was too bright for the weight we carried, but I made myself look up anyway. Lorraine had always said, don't let grief make you stare at the ground. You'll miss God's handwriting in the sky. I looked up, and I swore that sky would watch justice arrive. Navarro caught up beside me. Camila, you should know, sting operations don't always end tidy. He's slippery. I met his eyes. So was grief. But my aunt wrestled it every day. You think a man hiding behind Bible verses scares me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The federal team was already in motion, packing vests, laptops, radios. Somewhere in Miami, Darian Henson thought he was writing another script. We were about to edit the ending. The Sting team closes in on a short-term rental in Miami. Inside, Darian is mid-message to Gloria. His finger hovers over send. I've seen heart monitors flatline. I've seen codes run past the point of mercy. But nothing compares to the hush in a command van when a predator is about to lose his mask. The Sting was already live when I landed in Miami. Navarro pulled me aside, voice low, eyes heavy. You don't have to be here, Camila. Watching takedowns doesn't heal wounds. I adjusted the scarf tied at my wrist, Aunt Lorraine's gold one. I'm not here to heal. I'm here to witness. He studied me, then nodded. Then you stay behind the line. Non-negotiable. The van smelled of stale coffee and static. Screens glowed in rows, each square feeding live shots from the short-term rental across the street. A dingy building with sun-bleached curtains and a dented AC unit dripping water down the stucco. On the second floor, behind a slatted blind, a shadow moved. Darian. He thought he was invisible. The FBI tech whispered, subject is online. Laptop open. Chat window active. On Gloria's phone in Baton Rouge, a message bubble pulsed. 3 dots. The exact same 3 dots my aunt once waited on like they were Morse code from heaven. Navarro leaned closer to the feed. Confirm? Same cadence. Confirmed, the analyst replied. Waveform match at 97%. That's him. The team outside adjusted their vests. Black SUVs idled quiet. Radios crackled like anxious crickets. Breach in 5, 4. I held my breath. 3, 2, 1. The door buckled. Boots thundered. FBI. Hands where we can see them. On screen, Darian froze mid-keystroke. His finger hovered over send. His eyes darted toward the blinds, then back to the laptop. He didn't run. He didn't resist. He just lifted his hands with a smirk, like a man caught cheating at cards, not murder. When they cuffed him, his voice was almost polite. You boys must have prayed hard to find me. By nightfall, the table inside evidence looked like a garage sale of deception. 2 phones, each synced to a dozen WhatsApp accounts. A tablet logged into multiple Facebook profiles. A burner laptop humming with scripts and photos. A hard drive labeled voices. The last one cut the room's air. Analysts clicked open the folders. Hundreds of AI-generated headshots stared back, men who never lived, smiles too even, eyes softened just right. Each file neatly labeled, widower_Marcus, pastor_Ray, veteran_Marlon. Then the audio. Dozens of pre-recorded blessings. Variations of the same tone, the same tenderness. Rest well, Queen. God covers you tonight. Your spirit carries light. He didn't speak to women. He deployed lines like a soldier planting mines. The most important thing, Gloria never got that final message. Agents knocked on her Baton Rouge door instead. They showed her his mugshot. She wept, clutching her sister's hand, whispering, I almost sent him money this morning. Almost. That word felt heavier than any gavel. I thought of my aunt. No almost for her. She gave trust, time, prayers. She wired hope into a system designed to bleed it. Hours later, Darian sat in a gray room under buzzing lights. The video feed ran to our command post. He leaned back, cuffs clinking, expression unreadable. Mr. Henson, the agent began, we've recovered over 300 identities tied to your devices. AI-generated photos. Script templates. Financial logs. Do you want to explain? He shrugged. They reach out to me. I just give them what they're already asking for. Navarro muttered beside me, gaslighting even now. The agent pressed. And Lorraine Carter? She booked a ticket. She met you. She died. Darian smirked. She booked that trip. Not me. My nails bit into my palms. I wanted to burst into that room, to lay every photo of my aunt's grandkids in front of him and ask if he knew what their laughter sounded like. But Navarro's hand on my shoulder kept me rooted. We don't get justice by screaming at walls, he said softly. Within a week, the Department of Justice escalated. Cybercrime, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and homicide. Each charge carried Lorraine's name. They mapped Darian's system like surgeons charting arteries. A fake obituaries copied from newspapers. A prayer group rosters scraped for widows. Timed auto messages set like alarm clocks. A crypto wallet spiderwebbed across continents. Every detail screamed one thing, it was never about love. It was about design. And yet, every victim they interviewed used the same words, he made me feel seen. That's what they called it in the reports. The pattern of praise. Morning blessings. Nightly prayers. Strategic empathy. Every tactic engineered to lower defenses in women who had already fought enough battles in their lives. It made me sick. Because it worked. Because my aunt, sharp, disciplined, not naive, had still believed. But as Navarro reminded me, being human isn't a weakness. Exploiting humanity is the crime. By September, Darian sat in a federal holding cell in Miami, awaiting extradition to Puerto Rico. Prosecutors assembled timelines, exhibits, victims ready to testify. I visited the evidence room one last time. Among the clutter was my aunt's Bible, still stained with spilled foundation. I traced the leather cover, whispering, "We're not done." Because the trial wasn't just about convicting a man. It was about putting a mirror in front of the world and asking how many more Lorraines were out there, praying with ghosts in their inbox. Navarro found me there, standing quiet. "You ready for court?" he asked. I tightened the scarf on my wrist. "I've been ready since room 204. Jury selection begins. And in discovery, prosecutors uncover an undeleted recording where Darian laughs and says, "They're all just profiles waiting for scripture." The courtroom is about to hear his real voice. Courtrooms don't creak the way hospitals do. They hum. A low, steady buzz, like the sound before a thunderstorm. That's what I felt sitting behind the prosecution's table, Aunt Lorraine's scarf wound around my wrist like armor. The charge sheet read like a knife: wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, sexual assault, premeditated murder. But to me, it was simpler. This was the man who stole my aunt's last smile. The process felt like peeling layers of patience. 12 strangers asked if they could be fair. Some nodded too quickly, like they wanted out of work. Others looked down at their shoes, trying not to imagine the weight of a dead woman's voice notes echoing in their ears. One woman, mid-50s, raised her hand. "My sister was taken by a man she met online. I don't know if I can sit through this." The judge excused her gently. I watched her leave, clutching her purse, and wondered how many invisible sisters filled the world. The prosecution's first move wasn't a witness. It was a sound. They played one of Darian's saved recordings. His real voice, not the tender blessing tone, not the rehearsed sympathy, but the raw, careless version captured when he thought no one was listening. "They're all just profiles waiting for scripture." Gasps rippled through the room. A juror's pen froze mid-note. The defense shifted uneasily in their chair. I closed my eyes. That voice had been my aunt's comfort. Now it was her killer's signature. The jury's faces tightened as he described the automation, the scripts, the hundreds of fake widower profiles. "This wasn't chance," the agent said firmly. "It was programming." Then Sherelle, my cousin, took the stand. She carried herself like a woman balancing grief and duty. She held my aunt's favorite handkerchief, the one with tiny embroidered flowers. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "She thought she'd found joy again," she said. "After burying my father, raising us, never asking for anything, she believed God was giving her a second chance." She paused, looked right at the jurors. "We never got to say goodbye." No one in that room stayed dry-eyed, not even the court reporter, who stopped typing for a beat. The defense tried spinning the oldest tale in the book: fractured identity, childhood trauma, compulsions, not choices. They argued he didn't understand the weight of his actions. That he was mentally broken, not criminally responsible. But the prosecution had prepared. They pulled up Darian's flowcharts, color-coded scripts teaching him how to respond to women's grief with pre-written prayers. They showed bank transfers logged like invoices. They revealed screenshots of AI faces, generated in bulk, labeled like files in a cabinet. Deliberate. Planned. Cold. Then came the nail in the coffin. A recovered audio memo. Darian's voice again, unfiltered, almost laughing. "Say the Lord told you to reach out. That's all it takes. They believe what they need to hear. And then you take it." The room went stone-dead quiet. Even the defense attorney set his pen down. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My aunt had believed she was chosen. And this man had called it a trick. On the 12th day of testimony, the jury filed out. Hours later, the foreperson stood, eyes steady, and said the word that dropped like a gavel before the gavel. Guilty on all counts. But sentencing was still ahead. And Darian hadn't flinched. He hadn't begged. He hadn't even blinked. The judge announced life in prison without parole. Still, a storm lingered in the air, because this trial wasn't just about one man. It was about every woman who had been told God sent me by a stranger with a mask. Victims from across the country step forward. The courtroom becomes not just a trial, but a mirror. And the defense tries one last desperate move, claiming the recordings were fabricated. The word guilty should have closed the book. But in federal court, nothing ends that neatly. The judge's gavel echoed, and still Darian sat there like a man watching a TV rerun, no shock, no shame, no crack in the mask. That's when I realized, some men never break, even when the world is breaking them. But the courtroom? The courtroom did. Women flew in from across the country. Georgia, Illinois, Oklahoma. Each one stepped up with trembling hands and steady eyes. They spoke of voice notes that tucked them in at night. Playlists that reminded them of their late husbands. Prayers that landed in the quietest corners of their grief. And then, the betrayal. The wires. The lies. The sudden silence when accounts emptied. One woman, her gray hair pinned back, looked straight at Darian and said, "You made me believe my late husband sent you. I almost followed you to a hotel room too. If they hadn't knocked on my door when they did, I'd be where Lorraine is." The courtroom went silent but alive, like every bench carried a pulse. Desperation stinks in a courtroom. You can smell it before you hear it. The defense stood, clearing his throat, trying to sow doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, these recordings could have been fabricated. We live in an era of deepfakes. Can we truly trust that every word belongs to my client? The judge narrowed her eyes. Are you suggesting the government manufactured 300 identities, financial transfers, and AI scripts just to frame your client? The defense lawyer faltered. We simply ask the jury to consider the possibility. The prosecutor rose, calm and sharp. She cued the audio memo, the one where Darian's real voice laughed about scripture being bait. Then she projected the metadata, timestamps, GPS coordinates, tied directly to his seized devices. She looked the jury in the eye. This wasn't fabricated. This was practiced. And just like that, the last straw snapped. When it was my family's turn, Sherelle spoke first. Her voice shook, but her spine stayed straight. My mother gave 30 years as a nurse. She sat with people in their worst pain and never asked for anything back. She finally asked for one thing, a chance to feel loved again. And he weaponized it. She held up my aunt's scarf, the same one tied around my wrist. This is what I have left. Not her voice. Not her laugh. Just fabric. I followed her to the podium. My heart beat in my ears, but I kept my voice steady. I'm a nurse too, I told the court. I know what it means to carry strangers. To hold people together with your hands. My aunt did that for her whole life. And when she finally wanted someone to hold her, this man, I pointed at Darian, sold her faith back to her like it was a coupon code. I paused, looked at the jury. This is not just about Lorraine. It's about every woman who has ever been told she was foolish for wanting connection. She wasn't foolish. She was human. And humanity should not be a death sentence. The silence after that was thick enough to touch. Finally, the judge leaned forward, her robe shadowed under the courtroom lights. "Mr. Henson," she said, voice like iron wrapped in velvet, "you are guilty not only of theft and violence, but of corrupting trust itself. You preyed upon faith, upon loneliness, upon the most sacred human longing to be seen. And you left devastation in your wake." Her gavel landed heavy. Life in prison. No parole. No second chance to deceive another soul. For the first time, Darian blinked. Just once. We walked out of that courthouse into the humid San Juan air. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. But all I could see was my aunt's smile in that blurry airport photo. Justice had spoken, but grief doesn't leave when a sentence is read. It lingers. It reshapes. And in the weeks that followed, Lorraine's name traveled farther than her killer ever could. Because the next chapter wasn't about Darian at all. It was about legacy. It was about... At a national cybercrime conference in Atlanta, Sherelle takes the stage with her mother's scarf. She doesn't bring slides. She brings Lorraine's story, and a vow that no other family will walk blind into room 204 again. The word life carries differently in a courtroom. For Darian, it meant iron doors, endless gray, the sound of keys he'd never touch. For us, it meant something else, a lifetime of empty chairs, unreturned calls, birthdays with one less voice singing harmony. The gavel had fallen. The cameras outside spun their questions. But when my family walked back to the hotel that night, there was no celebration. Just silence. Heavy, raw, necessary silence. Reporters wanted sound bites. Advocates wanted quotes. But grief doesn't give you neat sentences. It gives you fragments. Sherelle answered one reporter with the only truth she had left. My mother wasn't weak. She was human. That's not a crime. The clip aired on evening news. And suddenly, Lorraine's name was everywhere, not as a cautionary tale, but as a rallying cry. By October, federal agencies were holding panels about romance fraud and digital predators. Not just hackers. Not just stolen bank numbers. But the way loneliness had been turned into currency. In Atlanta, at a packed DOJ conference, Sherelle stepped onto the stage wearing Lorraine's scarf. No slides. No teleprompter. Just her voice. "My mother died hoping for love," she began. "That doesn't make her naive. That makes her human. And in her name, we're going to teach women how to trust themselves before they trust a profile picture." The room rose to its feet before she even finished. Other victims' families reached out. Some sent emails, some letters, some just a folded note pressed into our hands after hearings. One line stuck with me: "She made me feel less alone. Not in my grief, just in being human." We weren't just mourning. We were building a map. A way for other families to see the red flags before they cost everything. In prison, Darian filed no appeal. He didn't beg. He didn't break. And maybe that was the truest thing about him. He'd built his life on silence that looked like sincerity. But outside those walls, his silence no longer mattered. What mattered was the noise my aunt's story made. The weight of guilty is strange. It doesn't heal. It doesn't return. But it clears a space. It says, this was not chance. This was not her fault. This was design, and it was stopped. For my family, that word became a kind of fragile relief. Like a cracked window letting in just enough air to breathe again. Months later, I stood at Isla Verde Beach where my aunt had wanted to sip coffee and write in her journal. I scattered white lilies into the tide. The waves carried them farther than I could reach, just like her story had traveled farther than any of us imagined. The ocean roared back against the shore. And I whispered, "We turned your hope into armor, Auntie. It won't be wasted." A new prevention program launches in Lorraine's name. Women gather with notebooks, not to mourn, but to learn. And I stepped to the podium to deliver the same vow my cousin did, this time with the whole world watching. The first time I spoke at a prevention seminar, I was terrified. Not of the crowd, of the silence that might follow. Would they hear my aunt's story as warning? Or would they hear it as judgment? But when I walked onto that stage in Atlanta, the ballroom was already filled. Women with notebooks. Men who had buried wives. Daughters holding hands with mothers. Everyone carrying their own version of loneliness. I placed Lorraine's scarf across the podium and took a breath. "I'm not here to tell you to stop hoping," I began. "I'm here to tell you hope needs armor." I explained the pattern of praise, how predators automate empathy, how they time blessings, how they avoid video calls with perfect excuses. I told them how my aunt, strong, brilliant, compassionate, still fell into a script because she believed being human wasn't something to guard against. And then I gave them tools. If they can't show their face, they're hiding it. Always let someone know where you're going, with who, and when you'll check in. No one blesses you at the same 5-minute window every night without scheduling it. That little twist in your stomach? It's not doubt, it's discernment. The crowd wrote furiously. Some nodded. Some wept. All leaned forward. Afterward, a woman pressed my hands and whispered, "Your aunt saved me today." I knew what she meant. Not because Camellia had chosen to die, but because we had chosen not to bury her voice with her body. Every retelling turned grief into a map. Every prevention session turned hope into armor. Months later, I returned to Isla Verde. This time, not for evidence, not for court, but for closure. I stood on the balcony of Seabright Coral Inn, the same place my aunt had tried to text all good. Landed safe. The ocean was restless, slamming against rock and sand, loud enough to drown out sorrow. I held her scarf in the wind and whispered, "You're safe now. And because of you, others will be too." If you're watching this, listen to me. If someone reaches out online and something feels off, even a little, believe yourself. Don't let loneliness blind you. Don't let compliments numb your caution. Take a screenshot. Share your location. Set a safe word with your family. And if a man claims God sent him but refuses to show his face, block him. Because love is real. But so are predators. And the difference between the two can be the space of a single message. Lorraine is not just tragedy. It's a light. A warning. A promise that we will not stay silent. So carry this story forward. Share it. Protect someone else's aunt, mother, sister, or daughter. Because hope can still heal. Hope can still protect. And this time, hope is armed.